It's a late Sunday afternoon. I pull up next to a church on Sydney Road, hop out of the car and start collecting my gear. Already, as I stand on the pavement, I can hear the sounds of the Brunswick Sacred Harp Group floating from the church's hall. It competes with the hustle and bustle of trams, cars and pedestrians, but it manages to cut through the noise. There's less traffic at this time of the week, and the stillness in the air adds to the sacredness of the site. I had been invited along to the rehearsal of the Brunswick Sacred Harp Group. When making contact with the choir's coordinators to find out more about the music of Sacred Harp, I was told that I had to come along to one of their meetings. To really experience Sacred Harp, they said, you must come and encounter the music in the flesh. So I grabbed a microphone and decided to find out what this experience was. I entered the hall in which the group were practicing. The hall, a converted church, was large and bounced sounds from wall to wall like children in a bouncy castle. Up one end of the polished wooden floor were 4 pews, in a square, all turned to face each other. On the pews sat a dozen or more singers. The youngest, about 4, had just finished colouring in a picture. The group were mid-song, but a gesture from one of the members invited me to come in and sit down. I had been invited to the afternoon rehearsal to experience firsthand the music of Sacred Harp, but I was curious as to why others in the group were drawn to attend the singing session.
Babylon is fallen, is fallen, is fallen. Babylon is fallen to rise no more.
Well, initially it was because of the novelty. I was curious to explore a new form of singing sacred music.
I first heard sacred harp music back in the 60s when I was an adolescent, and it was because I'm a secular singer, and it came from an interest in folk music and in field recordings, and I was introduced to an Alan Lomax record of his field recordings in the Deep South. And there were lots of very raw spiritual sounds, and 2 of the tracks on that album were sacred harp tracks. All my life I wanted to find that music and hear it because it just sounded like an almighty choir of angelic sound that was chaos, cacophony and bliss all in one.
I guess one of the main reasons as to why I came to the group's monthly rehearsal is that I probably wouldn't get the opportunity to experience the music of Sacred Harp elsewhere. This is the only known Sacred Harp group in Australia, and I might be waiting a while if I wanted to see their concert performance.
We never perform. The whole point of the singing is just to get together and sing, so it is very much the community. It's the continuity of friendships that people have kind of come and gone and come back again over the years, and just getting together for the sheer joy of singing.
I like its orientation. It's not about performance, and it's not about getting something perfectly right. It's just about sort of bathing in sonority.
With the choir not having the pressure to perform, there's less time focusing on the details of the music. Mistakes weren't singled out. Instead, the group's priorities seem to be more about forming a community of singers and being inclusive than to focus on correcting inaccuracies. Musical skills were not a prerequisite to join.
We've had all kinds of people come, some who've sung in church choirs for years, some who can't read a note of music, and almost everyone who's come has ended up singing. 1 or 2 who've somehow resisted the temptation and just sat and listened, which is fine if that's what they want to do. But it's participatory community singing, so you don't have to be an expert. No one cares if you sing a wrong note here or there. As long as you're getting into it and having fun with it, everyone is really glad that you're here.
I had arrived at the Brunswick Sacred Harp rehearsal during the middle of one of their hymns. Once they had finished, I was thrust a hymn book in my hand and introduced to each member of the group. Some had been attending for years, while others it was also their first time. Without realising it, I had joined the choir. I was quite unaware that this would happen. I had just come to listen and have a chat, but instead I was singing lyrics such as, "Give me the roses while I live, something to cheer me on. Useless the flowers you may give after the soul is gone."
Well, some of them I'm not too keen on the desolation, and I'd rather have hope and other words, but they nearly always end well in terms of sinners are saved and creation is mentioned. So what appears to be something that's a bit sad ends up okay.
The texts that we're singing are texts that go back hundreds of years, some of them, although others are more recent. And certainly the tradition was kept alive in conservative rural villages and towns in the south of the United States. And so the theology of the singing, the theology of the songs that we're singing is quite conservative, old-fashioned, almost kind of hard to recognise for some contemporary Christians. A lot of stuff about people dying and what happens when you die. Ideas about also looking for the promised land. Moving ahead, there are also songs of freedom and ringing in the year of Jubilee. So it's quite a mixed bag. But the dominant theme is, I guess, a sense of pay attention, become a Christian during your lifetime and pray and worship regularly so that when you die you'll go to heaven and so on. I think it's also important to note, though, that while those are the texts that we sing, not everyone would subscribe to those. And when Natalie and I learned this music in the States, it was immediately apparent that the room was full of people who were Christian, non-Christian, Jewish, people of no belief whatsoever, and a whole spectrum of different Christian perspectives. So some people sing the music for their own faith, and certainly that's a part of it for me. Though some of the lyrics, I guess, are a bit challenging.
I take a distance from the lyrics, although I find them historically interesting.
David the king was grieved and moved, he went to his chamber and wept. And as he went, he wept and said, "Oh my son, would to God I had died, would to God I had died, would to God I had died for thee, oh Absalom, my son.
Even the songs that are about death are about life beyond death and the hope of what's to come. And so that's the joy that's in it. I think the fact that the songs are so joyful and are sung so joyfully, even the ones that kind of have this big sad sound in a minor key, there's a very rich and lively tone to the way they're sung. And that for me helps in a very strange way to make the words easier to sing, even when I wouldn't agree to them. If you put them in front of me and said, "Is this your faith?" I'd say, "Well, no, that's an old faith, and a way of talking about God that I wouldn't subscribe to anymore." But somehow the words and the music come together, and it's inspiring and uplifting, and therefore really challenging to what do I think about God and about life and all that sort of thing.
And as he wept and said, "Oh my son."